Hi, I'm Amy. I love to share what I'm cooking for my family, and today I'm sharing three super easy yet really delicious dinner recipes with you all. I'm going to be making cheeseburger soup, beef and broccoli, and a sun-dried tomato chicken pasta. So let's go ahead and get started. To get started on this soup recipe, I'm going to go ahead and dice up some potatoes, some onion, and then the other veggie that's going to go in here are some carrots, and I just bought pre-cut, like pre-shredded carrots. So that's going to go in there as well. The original recipe calls for celery, but I'm just omitting it. We don't love celery, and I didn't really feel like buying any from the store this week. I don't know about you, but I really like to get the chopping out of the way first. That way it's done. I can get everything cleaned up and move on to the more fun part of cooking. So first I'm going to go ahead and dice up the onion. Moving on to prepping the potatoes. These are gold potatoes. The recipe calls for russet. I'm going to clean and peel them. I'm going to go ahead and chop up my potatoes now. I want them to be pretty small, nice, small bite-sized pieces. I do have toddlers and I feel like smaller pieces will be nice. I'm going to chop them all up as evenly as I can. I'll link the recipe below, but I'm slightly changing the order of how I'm making it. But first I'm just gonna go ahead and saute the onion. I chopped it up pretty fine just because I watched a video on YouTube about the differences of how finely you chop your onion. And if you chop it more fine, chop it smaller, then it's supposed to provide more flavor. So I'm giving that a try. And then I'm also just gonna go ahead and add in the shredded carrots. You could definitely shred your own if you'd like, just going the easy route. So I'm just gonna saute these until they get nice and soft. And of course, if you want celery, you'd add that at this point as well. The biggest problem I have when cooking carrots is they don't get soft enough. So I'm gonna go ahead and add a bit of water and cover the pan. So this way they'll steam and they'll be nice and soft and they won't be crunchy in our soup. I'm only doing it for a couple minutes, but this way they'll be nice and soft. I can already see after just a couple minutes that they're already getting softer. So at this point, I'm gonna leave the lid off and just let the water cook off. Now I'm adding in the ground beef and I'm just gonna cook this until it's completely cooked through. I'm feeling lazy, so I'm not gonna drain the meat. I'm just gonna take a paper towel and kind of blot the grease out of there. And then I'm gonna go ahead and add the seasonings and cook it for another minute or two. The recipe doesn't call for this, but I'm gonna add garlic, and then I'm also gonna add parsley, basil, and oregano is also not in the recipe. I'm actually also gonna add a touch of salt, not too much because the broth might be salty, and I'm gonna add pepper. I just cooked that for about 30 seconds, and I'm turning off the heat, getting out my big pot, and then we're gonna add the ingredients to the pot. The recipe calls for chicken broth, but I'm actually gonna use beef broth. So I'm going to add a few cups of this to the pot. I'm going to add the potatoes in, the onions and carrots that we sauteed up, and then we're going to add that meat right in here. Make sure and get all of the seasonings off the bottom of the pan. Now I just want to bring this to a boil, and then once it comes to a boil, I'm going to go ahead, cover it, turn it down to a lower heat, and simmer it for 10 to 12 minutes. In the meantime, I'm gonna get the kitchen cleaned up, and I'm going to shred the cheese, measure the rest of the ingredients that we need, like the milk. You're supposed to add sour cream. I actually completely forgot to buy sour cream. Here's where I experimented a little bit, and this was not part of the recipe, but the recipe said on the stovetop, melt butter, add flour, you know, that whole thing that you do for a lot of soups. I actually microwaved it, and spoiler, it worked very well. I microwaved it for about a minute and a half. I will leave more details in the description. I have all the rest of the ingredients ready to go. I have milk, the cheese that we shredded. I actually just made this roux in the microwave. I have no idea if it's gonna turn out. I just don't want it to taste like raw flour, so I will definitely let you know how that worked out. But I just microwaved it until the butter melted, and then I just stirred it together. This will just be a thickener. So we'll see how it works. And once the soup is ready for all the ingredients, I'll add them. Now, let's open it up and see how it looks. I'm gonna add the flour and butter mixture and just cook that for a few minutes just because we don't want to eat raw flour, and this way hopefully the soup will thicken up a bit. I can tell it's already making this soup a bit thicker. I don't know if you can see that, but it seems to be working, so I'll let you know if it tastes off because of how I did that flour and butter mixture. But if it tastes normal, that's a super, super easy way to do that without dirtying another pan, cooking it on the stove top for a few minutes. You see it's getting thicker. It's been about 3 minutes. I'm gonna turn the heat off and add the milk and the cheese and stir it up until the cheese is all melted. It has great flavor. I'm gonna add some more salt, and then I think it will be perfect. We all loved it. My 1 and 3-year-old had thirds of it. They loved it. My husband loved it. He's not a big soup person. I actually have already made it again. In the past 2 weeks, I've made it twice. I made it for someone on a meal train, so I'd highly recommend this one. Tonight for dinner, I'm doing beef and broccoli. I'm so excited about this. I had some broccoli in my fridge already. Originally, I was gonna do pepper steak, but you need some peppers for that, and I only have enough peppers for one recipe this week, so I'm gonna use it for a different recipe. So I figured let's use the broccoli and make beef and broccoli. So I actually bought shaved beef from Trader Joe's, but you could use any sort of beef and just slice it. Even if it's like a less tender cut of meat, you could just marinate it if you'd like. But it's gonna be easy, pantry staples. I also have some green onions here. Figured that would be a nice garnish. I'm gonna cook it over some rice. So let's go ahead and make dinner. I'm getting the chopping out of the way first, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut up the broccoli. That's the only thing I have to cut. The less chopping to do, the better. But if you needed to cut up your beef, you do that at this point as well. I'm gonna cook the broccoli, and then once the broccoli is done cooking, I'm gonna go ahead and cook the beef. Once the butter melts, I'm gonna go ahead and add in the broccoli and saute that for like 4 or 5 minutes with the lid on partially, it says. So I'll just put the lid on, take it off to stir it a couple of times. I wanted the broccoli to be soft but also firm so that it wasn't just gonna fall apart. And then once it was cooked through, I just took it out of the pan. I'm experimenting with different camera angles, so hopefully this works out well, but I love to cook rice in my Instant Pot. You could definitely use frozen rice, cook it in the microwave, cook it on the stovetop, anything that you'd like, but I rinse my rice and then I do a 1-to-1 part ratio of water to rice, and I usually do slightly more water, actually, just a tiny bit more. And then I cook it for 3 minutes and then let it natural release for 10. And then once it's done, I like to add usually a tiny bit of butter, like a tablespoon, and then a little bit of salt. I really like the shaved beef. I think it has good flavor and good texture, and also it cooks so quickly. So I just cooked it like 2 minutes on each side, and then I had to do 3 different batches. So I just took it out, added a new batch, took it out, added a new batch. I also didn't worry about seasoning it. If I was doing like a different sort of beef, I might have seasoned it, but this I didn't. So now I want to show you how the rice turned out. I'll include the method of how I cook the rice in the description below. I got it from a website. But there is a different way to cook rice that I'm interested in, kind of cooking it like pasta. It's pretty intriguing. So I just added the butter and the salt, gave it a really good stir. I think this makes really fluffy rice. I'm making the sauce directly in the pan. So the first thing I'm adding is some sesame oil. It calls for 2 tablespoons, but I'm not gonna add that much just because sesame oil has a super strong flavor. And I think my kids would prefer less of it, and I'd actually prefer less of it as well. So that's like probably a teaspoon. Next, I'm putting in some black pepper, some fresh garlic. I actually have the heat off, so none of this will burn because the pan is barely warm at this point. I turned it off to do something else with my kids for a few minutes. I'm gonna put some ginger in here. You could use fresh ginger if you have that. Cornstarch is going in next, and some brown sugar, and reduced sodium soy sauce. I love tamari. I use that in replacement of soy sauce a lot, but I actually don't have any right now. So I'm gonna add 6 tablespoons of soy sauce. This is reduced sodium. You can also use coconut aminos if you like coconut aminos. And the final thing I'm gonna add is some hot water. And then I'm gonna stir this pretty continuously to make sure the cornstarch doesn't clump up, just to make sure the sauce is nice and smooth. And I'm also gonna turn the heat back on now. I just wanna cook this until the sauce gets thick. So that hot water actually already made the cornstarch kind of dissolve. So you can see there's really no more clumps. There might be a few kind of black bits in here. That's because we had some residue left from when we cooked the meat on the bottom of the pan. So I'm just kind of trying to scrape that off as well. I don't know if you can tell, but look at how thick this sauce has gotten. It's only been about 2 or 3 minutes. This is about as thick as I want it, so I'm gonna go ahead and add the rest of the ingredients now. I'm actually also gonna turn off the heat. That way the meat doesn't cook anymore, or the broccoli. This smells so good. It smells like a little bit spicy from the ginger and the pepper, but you know, not hot spicy. Sweet from that brown sugar. Anyway, I just can't wait to try it. It looks so delicious too. And look at how thick that sauce got. I mean, it's just basically adhering to the meat and the veggies perfectly. If you like it a little bit thinner, just add some more water. You could add a tablespoon or 2 of water. We loved this. I will 100% be making this again. It's definitely one of my saved recipes. And I will say, when I was thinking about how I could change this recipe, you could even use like ground beef, ground chicken, ground turkey, and make it even simpler to cook the meat. I definitely recommend trying this one. Tonight for dinner, I'm doing Alfredo, but not a traditional Alfredo. I'm doing sun-dried tomato with a little fresh parsley, and then there's some chicken. Over on the stove, I've got my butter melting. My water is on. I'm just waiting for that to boil so I could add the pasta. I was going to do like a high protein Alfredo, but the ingredient I was going to use actually wasn't sealed properly, so I'm not going to use that. I don't want to use that from the grocery store. So I added a little bit of garlic, and I'm just going to cook this up just for like 30 seconds or so. I'm also using pre-cooked chicken breast, so if you are making your own, I'd say definitely go ahead and get started on the chicken. You could like roast it in the oven, something like that. Let's go ahead and add in milk. I'm gonna bring this to like a simmer, and then I'm gonna add some Parmesan. I'm not following a recipe for this, so this might not be like a normal way to make Alfredo sauce. And I'm also using skim milk because that's the only milk I have. Normally I'd use whole milk. It's actually only like the second time I've ever made Alfredo sauce, but I'm gonna give it a go. It's coming to a very slight simmer, so I'm gonna go ahead and add in about half the cheese. So I grated this Parmesan myself, and I also have a tiny bit of shredded, so I didn't have enough of the Parmesan that I grated from the block, so I'm also going to have to add in some shredded Parmesan in a little bit, so hopefully that doesn't affect anything. But I'm going to go ahead and turn the heat down to like a low, and at this point I'm also going to add in a little bit of pepper, and then I'm going to add in a touch of salt. I don't really have a reason for this timing, but I'm just going to go ahead and add in the rest of the cheese. I'm also going to add in some fresh parsley. You could skip this step or do just dried parsley if you'd like. I'm gonna add in my sun-dried tomatoes. I'll save some pasta water. I'll add the reserved pasta water to this sauce. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and add in that diced chicken. The chicken is already seasoned with salt, pepper, and garlic, and you can see the sauce has thickened up a little bit. So at this point, I'm just waiting for that pasta to cook. I'm just about to take the pasta out, so I'm gonna go ahead and take some of that pasta water. I'll try and save about a half cup. I'm gonna go ahead and add that reserved pasta water, as well as the pasta. I just tasted it. I love it. I love the sun-dried tomatoes and the chicken. It tastes a little garlicky, cheesy. It has a great flavor. You can tell that the texture looks really nice. It'll continue to thicken up a little bit more. One thing I will say is that when my husband and I were talking about this recipe, we both agreed it wasn't exactly like an Alfredo because it wasn't very rich, probably because I used skim milk. I think if you used whole milk or even cream, it would be much richer. But it was similar to an Alfredo sauce in that it was cheesy and garlicky and creamy. I'm so happy I got to share these recipes with you. Please go ahead and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed watching, and subscribe if you're new. And I'll see you next time. Bye.